Exactly 9:38 a.m. and we're looking at something which I view as pretty problematic. It's not sitting well with me at all. It's regarding the 7.6 billion rand loan from the World Bank, and this is supposedly for South Africa's COVID 19 emergency response project. I thought we were over that. But be that as it may, the loan comes following a request by the government of South Africa for assistance in financing vaccine procurement contracts. Again, I thought that was way, way behind us. So perhaps there's something I'm missing as far as this loan is concerned. Let's talk to Professor Patrick Bond about this matter. A very good morning to you, Professor Patrick Bond. You are from the University of Johannesburg, and always a pleasure to have you on my show.
Oh, Slams, it's great to be with you and the viewers. Thanks for having me, Julie.
Okay, undoubtedly you have heard my opening statement regarding this loan. What am I missing? Why do I feel that something's just not right here as far as this loan is concerned? We also need to look at repayment. Is this a soft loan? How long is it going to take us to repay the loan? And I thought we were well and truly over COVID. Yes, we are in the fifth wave, but we are over the worst, are we not?
Yes, let's just start with that. I think you're absolutely right to have the concerns about a hard currency loan from an institution, the World Bank, that's done enormous damage and whose COVID lending is very dubious. So let's go back to, do we still need vaccines? Well, these are vaccines, 47 million doses we've already used. Now, as you no doubt know, we're only around 50% of the adults getting vaccinated. And then we have, in addition, well, total 98% of our society either got vaccines and didn't get COVID, that's about 10%, or got vaccines and did get COVID, or didn't get vaccines and did get COVID. But regardless, at 98%, we're probably about the highest of any country amongst the adult population. According to the last week or so, we've had two major studies released. And that means that the original strategy, which was to get everyone vaccinated, 2/3 of the people to get the so-called herd immunity, didn't work. And one of the reasons is we didn't have a very good health system that got the vaccines out to poor people, especially the vast number of people that are in rural areas where the public health system's so weak. So we do now know there's a race and a class bias in who was getting vaccinated, but also who was getting hospitalized and who was dying. We did have 300,000 deaths. The last wave, the fifth wave that we're just coming out of, wasn't so bad because the virus, the latest variants aren't so serious, and people do have that intrinsic immunity, either the vaccine or the having had the virus. Now, the dilemma is we're trying to get our heads around a loan for past purchases of 47 million. We've also got huge surpluses, and where some of them are approaching the expiration date. They become useless, and they're quite expensive. They're in the range of 100 to 150 rand each. So we're looking at a big mess. And we had a digital vibes, let's say a sort of public
Scandal.
relations strategy that obviously went belly up because of the corruption. And we've had, let's say, health insurance apartheid. We've had public sector, which supplies roughly 80% of the people with health services, and we have 20% in the private sector, 14% who have decent health insurance that covers hospitalization and treatment. So it's a health apartheid system, and that means of those 300,000 who died, predominantly they were African, and they were women, and they were elderly. So we had the vulnerabilities in the society, the extreme injustices, amplified terribly by COVID. And one of those is that we have a global apartheid of vaccines. And so even President Ramaphosa, who's no opponent, let's say, of big multinationals, he's worked closely with some of the worst of them, Lonmin and Glencore and so forth, but he actually fought in the World Trade Organization to make sure these vaccines were going to be generically available. They could be produced. And we do have in Quebec, we have an Aspen pharmaceutical plant working with Johnson & Johnson, and they have massive excess supply. and they're not able to sell to Europe, so there's to Africa, because the Europeans have kind of got the monopoly on that market. So many frustrations in the way this is all being handled. And now we add to that a dollar loan from the World Bank, an institution we should be defaulting on prior loans, especially because of the climate catastrophe. Of course, the biggest was Medupi. And then in January, we took another massive loan for them, 11.7. And don't forget, in 2020, the World Bank has a fraternal institution called the IMF, International Monetary Fund. And from them, we got a 4.3 billion, 60 billion Rand plus loan. So now we're deep under their thumb. And that means the other element that we have to be very cautious of is losing economic sovereignty and the economic conditionalities, especially austerity. And there's, again, the World Bank, up to its old tricks, cutting health budgets using first Tito Mboweni, even in February 2020, even before the IMF loan. And then that was amplified last October in the medium-term budget by Mboweni's replacement, Enoch Godongwana. And the last point, to just throw all this together, we do need foreign exchange, which is the justification for Godongwana getting a dollar loan when we should be making these pharmaceuticals locally without any, well, let's say it's a euro loan, a dollar loan, a foreign currency loan. We're not getting export revenue from a retroactive loan. So repaying it is a problem. And then when our currency goes down, as it's been doing the last week, pretty dramatically, from 15.3 to lower than 16 to the dollar, then our repayment obligations go up and the effective interest rate goes up, because we're not able to pay those back in Rand. We pay them back in dollars, or in this case, euros. That means that the effective interest rate is really high. And the really terrible kicker in this is that, why do we need foreign exchange? Well, one reason is we're exporting our insurance and pension funds, because Enoch Godongwana in February released the exchange controls. What used to be, if you have an insurance fund or pension fund, 70% must be kept in the country. Now, thanks to Godongwana, it's down to 50. So serving international financial capital and local financial capital and rich people, that money's flooding out. And so the JSE is a bit shaky. And even the business press is beginning to say, whoa, if we're going to lose 800 billion Rand through this exchange control liberalization, what might that do to our stock market, to our other investments? And that's why I think this kind of weird last gasp, attempt to get some dollar lending for retroactive vaccines already given, which doesn't make any sense in any business terms, but it also helps the World Bank to beef up its COVID portfolio. That might help explain it, that we're a little bit under stress on the foreign exchange front, but this is absolutely the wrong way to go about solving that problem, isn't it?
Does that suggest then that we didn't pay for the vaccines that we had already received and administered? Is that what you're saying? And
I wish that
also,
was the case, because the demand from the public health community is that these be given free. They're a global public
exactly,
good, right? In other words, if you can get everybody in the world vaccinated, then you don't fear the Delta variant or the Omicron or any of the other new ones that are coming out of places, including South Africa, where the vaccination rate isn't so good. We really need a global public good, a grant from the rich countries to everyone to make sure that we have these vaccines. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. We were paying very high prices. And then retroactively, the financing, the loan from the World Bank, is meant to cover those 47 million doses. And, we still need more, because there's going to be new variants. The Chinese have just discovered that their Sinovac isn't very good for Omicron. They've had a massive lockdown and terrible economic crisis because the vaccines that are out there aren't all properly correlated, and we're going to need to update them. And whether it's a Sputnik and Sinovac and the BRICS vaccine center that was supposed to be established in 2018, it's finally up and running in a virtual sense, or if it's the Western, the J&J, the Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and whether it's any of these, we really should be collecting all the information in the WHO and trying to get a general vaccine, not only for this virus, but for the next ones that are coming down the road. So in all these ways, our leaders locally and especially internationally have failed us. And they're meeting next week. I don't know if you know, Julie, but the BRICS have a big meeting on Friday, a virtual meeting. And then the following Monday, then Ramaphosa and Narendra Modi go to Germany. and they've been invited to the G7. That's the imperial powers. And one of the things that Ramaphosa and Modi, who were both pretty good in the WTO, demanding generic medicines, the end of intellectual property, a waiver on these, they'll be cross because the virus still is a devastating problem in much of our land, even if in Europe and parts of the West they seem to have kind of gone past the COVID stage.
Okay, Professor, one or two very short, sharp questions before we wrap up. How and when are we going to pay back this loan? Was it necessary? Did we not have resources to pay for the vaccines? And as you rightly said, I think the whole country presumed that these vaccines were given to us at no cost.
Well, yes, that's been the demand. And the demand also, I should add, is that the World Bank take the so-called haircut on their loans. They made a loan, for example, for Medupi, which was corrupt, Hitachi and the ANC, and fuel the climate catastrophe that just, for example, killed 500 people in Durban in April. Now, that means we should be, if we had a good government responsive to the needs of the people, questioning many of these and calling it out odious debt. And countries all around the world that are in trouble, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Argentina, are beginning to do so. And that's one of the most exciting strategies is a debt cancellation on grounds of climate and public health. So I think that's where we would want to go. Instead, what especially Finance Minister Godongwana, Reserve Bank Governor Kganyago are doing their business as usual, which is letting a lot of money flood out of the country through illicit financial flows and exchange control liberalization. And that's going to put more pressure on us as we go to the international lenders to make up for that more austerity, because those lenders have conditions, and you can read them in the IMF report in mid-2020 and last year's World Bank country partnership report. So it's a very tragic situation where Ramaphosa is losing control politically, Godongwana is losing control economically, and we haven't really found the progressive alternative to move in. I would point you, I'm biased on this, but to the South African Federation of Trade Unions, which has put out a document very critical of this loan, but unfortunately it's under the radar screen because there's so many other exciting things like, thefts in Pala Pala and all the rest of it that are distracting us.
Goodness me, it just gets worse with every passing day, does it not? Would we be able to pay back the loan? That's the big question. And where's the money going to come from? Is it again going to be the burden of the taxpayer?
Oh, yes, it is, because the taxpayer is always funding Treasury. But, in the whole scheme of things, this $480 million against $170 billion foreign debt seems small. But my point being that you add all these up, the January 2021 World Bank loan, the IMF loan, and now we're talking real money, over 80 billion rand, plus the existing World Bank loans. So renegotiation with these international lenders, because they really have represented the police of global financial imperialism. And it's really time, I think, for a strong president, and I don't think it's Ramaphosa, given his inclination, to stand up and to help unite the third world. In the past, there were people like Julius Nyerere or Fidel Castro who would do that. They'd call for a global debtors cartel and try to balance the interests of the world, to have, for example, ecological sustainability, get rid of this huge climate burden by having reparations paid, and then not paying back the debt. And these are the sorts of arguments that I'm seeing circulating, but it'll be from the social movements that are really in the streets protesting. Maybe that'll
Absolutely.
be a subject for another discussion, because I think that might be the only hope to shake this government into sensibility.
I look forward to that discussion. That's where we have to leave it. And worrying indeed is all I can say. But thank you for your time, Professor Patrick Bond from the University of Johannesburg, talking to us about the issue around this latest loan from the World Bank. It is 9:52. This is News and Views with me, Julie Ali, right here on Salam Media.